tonight. Clashes intensifying in Minnesota as ICE agents face off with protesters. Why some Christian leaders are now sounding the alarm and demanding action for refugee families. Plus, from Nigeria to China, faith is under fire. The stunning new report that's shedding light on persecuted Christians around the world. And Iranians massacred in the streets. The brutal crackdown on protesters as a nationwide uprising rocks the regime.
They need the help of the United States to get over the finish line, to take this revolution to a place where it would be meaningful.
Plus, Greenland up for grabs. Tensions escalate as Trump pushes for control and Greenland fires back. And the battle over abortion heats up on Capitol Hill. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Tensions flaring in Minneapolis, the flashpoint in a national immigration crackdown. Good evening, I'm John Jessup.
And in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Well, new clashes breaking out tonight between protesters and ICE agents in Minnesota.
The unrest only growing 1 week after a federal agent shot and killed a woman by the name of Renee Good. Officers have been firing tear gas, pepper spray, and flashbangs to break up demonstrators while they still carry out arrests. Homeland Security alleges that Good attempted to run over officers with her car, adding today that the agent who killed her suffered internal bleeding. Now, city officials dispute those claims, saying the FBI has shut them out of the investigation. Several federal prosecutors have resigned, citing concerns over how the case is being handled. But tonight, the White House is doubling down with plans to send in even more immigration officers. Meanwhile, the State Department announced new rules starting January 21st. The United States will suspend immigrant visa processing for citizens from a list of 75 countries.
Well, and as tensions continue to grow, some faith leaders are now weighing in.
The Christian aid group World Relief is raising concerns about how immigration enforcement is being carried out, especially its impact on refugees and persecuted Christians.
Matthew Sorens joins us now. He is the Vice President of Advocacy and Policy at World Relief. Matthew, welcome. Good to see you. So World Relief has been watching the situation closely in Minnesota. Can you tell us more about the cases you're hearing about, Matthew, and what prompted World Relief to take this stand?
Yeah, starting this weekend, we got word that a number of refugee families, so to be really clear, these are families who were invited by the U.S. government to come to the United States and rebuild their lives in the U.S. because they had fled a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons like their faith or their political opinion, their race. A number of refugee families who were lawfully present had immigration officers show up at their door and asked to come in some cases under false premises, claiming to be people whom they were not. And when allowed in, they were detained. And at this point, we know that a number of families have been moved to Texas. We're not entirely sure of what's happening, but this is affecting, we believe, dozens of refugees at this point who are lawfully present, who are now held in detention. And of course, they're very fearful that they could be returned to their countries of origin where they initially fled persecution for reasons like their faith in Jesus.
So this statement from World Relief is about as forceful as one that I've ever seen from this organization. You call the operation in Minnesota a 5-alarm fire, shameful and unpatriotic for preying on children and families who are here after fleeing violence, and as you mentioned before, here at the invitation of the United States. So what exactly is it that you're wanting to see?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's really important to note this does include children who are being detained by our government at this point. It also includes, parents picked up on their way to work and children left home alone when a parent didn't show up. And again, there's important conversations to be had about how we enforce laws in humane ways that honor the law for those who have violated immigration law. This is a distinct category of people who are here lawfully because they fled persecution and because our government invited them to come. So we'd really like the federal government to stop this operation. They're calling it Operation Paris. We would like the legal rights of refugees to be respected, and we'd really like the church to rally around refugee communities, including those persecuted for their faith in Jesus, and say this is not, we want the worst of the worst deported. I think we all want that. These are not the worst of the worst. These are lawfully present refugees who've not been charged with any crime in any cases that we're aware of, who have gone about the process that our government has established for them.
Matthew, as a follow-up, you just mentioned the worst of the worst. You know, in a broader sense, illegal immigration has been an issue for presidents for decades. Supporters of ICE in this current administration might say all of the tactics we see are attempts at righting wrongs that have been going on for years, and that can be messy and difficult. What's the position of World Relief when it comes to the broader context of immigration?
Yeah, we have no objection to ICE detaining and, of course, giving due process to, but eventually deporting people who've been convicted of serious criminal offenses. The hard reality, and I live in the Chicagoland area where ICE has been very present, that's been less than 3% of the immigrants detained by ICE who have been convicted of a violent crime, and the majority have not been convicted of any crime at all. And now what we're seeing in Minneapolis is actually escalating that to another level to go after immigrants who are lawfully present in the country. The reason ICE knows where they live is because they have been reporting their address changes as they're supposed to the federal government. So we want to see people who are threats to public safety detained and deported. I think the vast majority of Americans want that. Evangelical Christians want that, clearly. But I think it's a mistake for the administration to think that most evangelical Christians or most Americans of any background want to see lawfully present immigrants who have followed all the rules be detained and separated have their families separated in many cases. To see children held in detention facilities is not something that I think our country should be doing.
Yeah, you know, taking this stance, are you concerned that maybe some of your supporters, maybe some of your donors, might push back against this and the backlash potentially you could see?
You know, I think our supporters, who are Christians, and the vast majority of them, are with varying political opinions, but this is something, we've done polling with Lifeway Research. The vast majority of evangelical Christians believe that the U.S. has a moral responsibility to receive refugees. 70% or so of evangelical Christians said that earlier. Well, I guess it was in 2025 at this point. So our supporters are usually held within that 70%, and regardless of who's president, they want to see our laws enforced. This is not enforcing our laws. This is going after people who are lawfully present. The Romans chapter 13 says that government should be a terror to those who do what is wrong, but it should be protecting the rights of those who do what is right. And if you do what is right, you should have nothing to fear from the government. This is an instance where government has gone wrong because people who have done everything right, in fact, who are here because of their faith in certain cases, are fearing persecution from the U.S. government. And that's not what the government should be doing.
All right, Matthew Sorens with World Relief, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, a new report shows that the simple act of worship can often become a death sentence for those who can't get asylum and escape to safe havens like the United States. From China to Nigeria, this year shows the highest number of countries persecuting Christians on record. Yeah, it's alarming. U.S. lawmakers are pushing for a shift in our foreign policy, and they're warning that when religious liberty erodes abroad, that we feel it right here at home. CBN's Brody Carter has more.
Faith is under fire in nearly 30 countries. That's the grim reality laid out in more than 100 pages of the latest annual report from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. In those areas, people of all faiths are facing imprisonment and death for their beliefs.
You see, folks, religious freedom is not a Western value. It is a human right. And when it is violated anywhere, it should concern freedom-loving people everywhere.
Nowhere is that violation more lethal than Nigeria. The commission reveals more than 80% of the world's religion-based murders happened there in 2024.
Let us acknowledge that there are too many killings in Nigeria.
For Rebecca Dali, a former prisoner of Boko Haram, the tragedy is personal as she documented thousands of murders committed by the terror group last year. Since escaping, she's started the Center for Caring, Empowering, and Peace Initiatives, serving more than 2 million Nigerians caught in extremist violence.
All Nigerians, be they Christian or Muslim, want to live together in peace.
Globally, 16 countries are designated in the report as countries of particular concern, with 12 others on a special watch list. More than 2,300 people are currently imprisoned for their faith.
When the government demands syncretization in practice, it means removing crosses, replacing hymns with Revolutionary Party songs, rewriting sermons to align with socialist core values, and installing facial recognition cameras in sanctuaries.
National security analyst Grace Drexel, whose father is imprisoned in China, testified the threat is evolving because believers are being targeted after they flee their countries to safety. Other leaders point to the unknown of dead, especially in countries like Iran and Syria, where sectarian violence after the Assad regime fell left an estimated 1,300 dead.
In Syria, the persecution has not necessarily been at the hand of the government, but rather it's been the weak rule of law. As the government's looking to establish authority and has been unable to do so.
Ryan Brown with Open Doors US specifically tracks Christian persecution, providing emergency aid and trauma relief in some 70 countries. He calls on the church to remain vigilant in prayer.
I can't tell you how many folks I've been that, as they've been in prison, have told me that, that they've taken such comfort in knowing that they're not forgotten, that there's a body of believers around the globe that are consistently lifting them up in prayer.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. And coming up, deadly protests in Iran and the power struggle over Greenland heats up in Washington. All next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. The Iranian regime has signaled swift executions to silence protesters who have taken to the streets for weeks now, demanding an end to the regime. Human rights groups say at least 2,400 people have been killed in the crackdown, and I've heard numbers that are way higher than that.
Way higher in the several thousands. Now, U.S. troops in Qatar are being repositioned as President Trump considers a response. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has more.
The president is meeting with his advisors to discuss a number of options. Some believe that help on the way may include military, cyber, and psychological attacks aimed at the regime's leaders and the infrastructure carrying out the massacre of protesters.
They need the help of the United States to get over the finish line, to take this revolution to a place where it would be meaningful, would actually topple the regime. Again, they do not have weapons. They don't have any formal organization on the ground.
While the protesters look for help, human rights groups say more than 2,500 are known dead, but some estimates put the deaths over 10,000. Iranian pastor Ara Tarosian played this message he received from an Iranian family to CBN's Raj Nair.
Arash was alone. With the shotgun, they start shooting him. And his cousin tried to take him back, but he couldn't do it. And they couldn't take the hospital, and he died on the hand of his father.
There are also concerns the government will begin executing protesters in custody, including 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, who is facing death by hanging. The U.S. and at least 9 other nations are telling their citizens to get out of Iran immediately, while Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman are warning Trump not to intervene. The protesters are rallying around the son of the former Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. Reportedly, he's met with Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. He also addressed the Jerusalem prayer breakfast held at Mar-a-Lago this week.
We need your prayers more than ever to make sure that this does happen. And we will do our part. And I appreciate your solidarity and support. Thank you, my friends. And hopefully, we'll have the next prayer breakfast in Tehran once liberated. And we will welcome you with open arms.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, here with us now with more on the United States response is CBN News senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright.
So, Kelly, we saw the president say to the Iranian people that help is on its way. Do we know any more about what that means tonight?
Yeah, Jenna and John, good evening to you. Before we came on air, the president informed members of the press that he is keeping all military options on the table. He did not go into detail what those options would include. However, he did announce today that his administration has been told that Iran is no longer going to conduct executions of Iranian protesters. He added that he's been told by members of his team that Iran has stopped the killing of its citizens. So at this point, it's a wait and see to see what Iran is actually doing on the ground to its citizens. He maintains, however, that he will keep those military options on the table.
So, Kelly, we heard in Chris's report that protesters in Iran are backing the former Shah of Iran, or Reza Pahlavi, rather, the son of the deposed Shah who left in 1979. So what more can you tell us about Pahlavi, and what's the president's thinking when it comes to him as a possible replacement for the regime?
So, John, Reza Pahlavi, just for reiteration of what he is and who he is, rather, is the son of the late Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was deposed during the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Now, that's when the country transitioned from a monarchy to the Islamic Republic under Ayatollah rule that it is today. Reportedly, White House envoy Steve Witkoff met with Crown Prince Pahlavi over the weekend. Pahlavi is positioning himself to be the transitioning leader of Iran. But I got to tell you, some people here in America who support the Iranian people and their protests are not in favor. I met with some of them yesterday on Capitol Hill as they were outside of the Cannon office building demonstrating before members of Congress, stating that they do not want a Shah, they do not want an Ayatollah, they want to establish their own democracy. And so many people will be looking at that as well as this continues, and they're basically calling on support from the American people as well as the U.S. government. But in terms of determining their own future and what their government will look like, they told me that they do not want a Shah or anything like a monarch or Ayatollah, but would like to have a democracy.
Yeah, we're all watching and waiting to see what happens here. Kelly, if we take a look at Gaza, the Trump administration announced that phase 2 of the plan to end the conflict and rebuild the enclave officially began today. What can you tell us about that?
So look, this is a very significant development. The key components for this phase 2 include the following, and that is establishing a transitional technocratic Palestinian administration. The National Committee for the Administration of Gaza is what it's being called, and it's been established to manage the daily affairs for the people living there. It also includes a demilitarization, and that means Israel's defense forces will begin making a withdrawal from Gaza, including the disarmament of Hamas and all unauthorized personnel. And then here's an important component: reconstruction, which includes plans for the large-scale reconstruction of the territory, which we are told has an estimated cost of more than $50 billion. And then, of course, falling under the American supervision, that means the new administration will operate under the oversight of a Trump-led Board of Peace and International Panel.
One final question to squeeze in about Greenland. We know the president says one way or the other we're going to have Greenland. We know that there was a meeting with Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Mark Rubio with Greenland officials and Denmark officials. Is the administration at all worried about what European allies might think who are very against this idea?
John, from the outside looking in, no, they are not worried. The president is dead set on doing something to have U.S. control of Greenland. And, of course, the meeting going on today, we will see the outcome of that. They agree to disagree, and they're moving forward with talking about it. But Greenland is on the president's list of being able to control in order to keep out Russia and China.
Okay. Senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Sure.
Well, up next, abortion pills in the crosshairs. The fight for the next frontier for leaders in the pro-life movement. More when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Pro-life leaders want to restrict abortion drugs they say put pregnant moms at risk. Today, teaming up with Republicans in Washington to address those policies.
CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London was at the press conference today. London, this is a topic you've been following for months now.
That is right, Jenna. Well, first of all, you could feel the sense of urgency in that hearing room today. The primary focus was on the abortion pill. It's called mifepristone. Earlier leaders called on the Food and Drug Administration to immediately take mifepristone and all generic forms of this drug off the market. They want the pill suspended from shelves so it can be evaluated for further associated health risks. These risks are currently not reflected on mifepristone's warning label, and for months, certain members of Congress have written letters to the FDA commissioner challenging him to change the label to reflect the pill's dangerous data. Senator Josh Hawley echoed that challenge today. Listen.
More than 1 in 10 who take this drug without any sort of doctor aid end up in a serious adverse health event. That's the medical term for in a lot of trouble. In a lot of trouble. Like what? Like hemorrhaging, like sepsis, like life-threatening conditions.
And Holly was reading from a study which revealed mifepristone has caused serious adverse complications. You heard some of those there in nearly 1 in 10 pregnant moms who use it. Testimonies were also shared, John and Jenna, about how mifepristone has enabled abusers to force this drug on pregnant moms without their consent. Pro-life leaders here today are also urging in-person visits. They're fighting for protective laws requiring a doctor to prescribe this drug, restricting anyone's ability to just casually order this drug through the mail.
Abortion drugs are being mailed into my state to go around state law to facilitate the death of children in my state. It's not unethical for us to be able to just stand out and speak out and say, we want children to be honored and valued, to be welcomed into the world, but to also be respected in this process as well. So we're speaking out on this. We are challenging HHS and we're challenging the administration to do what the administration did during their first term. That was to say, you've got to have a doctor's appointment to be able to get access to this drug.
Got to have a doctor's appointment. Yeah, the press conference today was led by Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council, who joined a number of Republicans and attorneys general from Louisiana and Ohio. And something that really stood out to me today, guys, was when Holly said many times it's harder to ship alcohol than it is to receive an abortion pill through the mail. He also pointed to data which shows there are more abortions today than when Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, and it's because of this drug, mifepristone. John, Jenna?
Yeah, they make a compelling case. All right, Michelle London on Capitol Hill. Thank you, London. Coming up, a trip to Paris, soaring the skies in a hot air balloon. The technology bringing the world to seniors right after this. Finally tonight, an innovative piece of technology is allowing seniors to create social connections and travel the world for the comforts of their home.
I love it. It's made possible through virtual reality technology headsets from a group called Rendiver, bringing adventure to 800 senior centers across the United States and Canada. So the device features thrilling experiences like mountain climbing and auto racing and allows users to connect with fellow members of their retirement community.
I think they're fun. It lets you get out of your own environment and either go to a new place or visit places where you've been.
Studies show when the elderly use VR, it can improve cognitive function and help prevent feeling socially isolated. I think they look great with those VR headsets, and granted, it might be nicer to go visit the real thing and feel the warmth of the sun and the nice temperature and see the things.
The food.
And the food.
Yeah.
Still not bad.
This is a great option.
Yep. Thanks for watching.